Um, what is up, everybody? Aaron the Dog back with his second breakdown of this Wednesday. It is the PFL Challenger Series #1 live from Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida. Going to be just 4 fights we're breaking down. It's the PFL Contender Series, essentially. So, but with that being said, I mean, I think Joshua Silveria is probably better than just about anybody who appears on the Contender Series. So, it's kind of interesting there. But otherwise, couple last-minute replacements. So Simone Powell, who I was really excited to break down, frankly, and looking forward to seeing him fight, had to withdraw. And as did João Paulo Fagundes, another guy I was looking forward to. He was taking on Bruce Soto, while Carl Williams was taking on Simone Powell. Now, and for those, Milos Amos is in against Carl Williams, and we're actually going to start there. And both of us familiar with Milos. Unfortunately, there are currently no lines available, but they already did update the picture on here, if you notice. So on Tapology, they already got Amos in there and Davis. So, good job on Tapology there being up to date for once on something. So that's good. But yeah, we got 4 fights, all in the light heavyweight division. I think each week they are going to just go with a different division. I'm not sure how many weeks the Challengers. Do you know?
I want to say like 6, maybe.
Okay, so that would be each division. So are they just highlighting a division each time? And
yeah, it's like each time it's a different weight class.
Are they taking a certain amount, or are they just based on performance, kind of?
Yeah, that's what I'm confused about too. I'm not sure. I don't know if they're gonna just take everyone.
Or do they know? Do they know? Like, I'm not sure if they know. They're like,
it's the $1 million question.
The PFL $1 million question. I see.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So all these fights are in the light heavyweight division, so that's easy for me to remember. And we're gonna start with Milos and Carl Williams here. Again, we found out about these replacements within the hour, but we're both pretty familiar with the guys who are replacing particularly, so I don't think it will hold up too much here. But 3-1 Carl Williams, 32 years old, the Virgin Islands, now fighting with American top team Atlanta. It's kind of funny because Milos is over at Miles. Sorry, I was calling him Milos. I apologize. Miles Amos. I got the names. Also known as Black Santa. That's much easier. At American top team Black Box, which I'm not familiar with at all. But both guys 6'2", 6'3", around the same size. Miles, I think at times was, thinking about middleweight. So you see some catchweight fights in there, 200 range or lower. Carl Williams, I'll start out with 3-1, 32 years old, 6'3". He's going to be a slightly larger guy. Did last fight in December of 2021. He lost to Jason Butcher. No shame there. We've kind of seen how Jason Butcher's looked in his next fight out. Blanking on who he beat just recently, but looked really good. He got a first-round finish, I believe, in the fight, if I'm thinking of it correctly. Before that, fought Deshaun Boatwright, known for his loss on the Contender Series, basically. It was a knee injury. But all of his fights have been in 2021 for Carl Williams. Was pretty active as an amateur from 2019 to 2020 as well, losing 1 fight by armbar in there. Not recognizing a lot of his opponents, but he has fought all opponents with plus records, albeit 2-0, 1-0, and 3-2. Then took the step up against Jason Butcher, and he got subbed in 1:30. So it's kind of hard to really tell with Carl Williams, especially 3-1. Taking on the short-nosed replacement, Miles Amos, not Milos. He's on a 2-fight win streak since having a little bit of trouble both with LFA, where Jalen Fuller put him away with a choke in the 3rd round. But overall, Fuller was pretty thoroughly dominating that fight. But I actually like Jalen Fuller quite a bit. He's kind of one of those guys at 185 who I do like, and Miles has fought at 185. So he's a little bit of a thinner 205er. He's got a rear naked choke over a 2-11 guy, and that decision went over a 4-3 guy. Not really sure how much improvement I'm expecting out of Miles here. I think that if I had to make a pick at this point, I would take Carl Williams, just because I just don't like when kind of non-205ers fight at 205, especially Carl Williams does look pretty physical. And But I mean, Milos could certainly come in there and take it, but I don't have odds on it. I think they're going to be close to a pick 'em if I had to guess.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what this opens at. Obviously, we didn't have a ton of notice about this change here. Miles Amos coming in here short notice. We'll talk a bit about Carl Williams. Obviously, you hit on the fact that, he's training at Team Lima. And he had 5-1 amateur career, fought all those fights on NFC, which is a promotion headquartered in Atlanta. All wins by decision. The one loss was armbar. So his 2 losses as an amateur and a pro both came by submission. He's 3-1 as a pro now, though, with 2 finishes. Had that knee injury win over Deshaun Boatwright, who, like you mentioned, at one point was a 3-0 fighter on Dana White's Contender Series. That fight did not go well for him, but, he was a well-thought-of guy at one point, and Jason Butcher, that fight for Carl Williams, that's a pretty big step up. And he did get the wrestling going there and had a little bit of success in the scramble, but he couldn't get anything going in the guard and he got submitted. But like you mentioned, I don't really think that's a bad loss. I mean, that's a guy who's choked out Jack Hermanson. He knocked out Andreas Mihalidis, knocked out Jesse Murray, fought guys like Max Christian, Emiliano Sordi. He's not a bum. He's pretty good. I don't really think there's any shame in that loss. Williams striking wise, so I couldn't find a ton of extended film on this guy striking, but he was saying in an interview that he's been working on the boxing a lot, and he was actually training for a bare knuckle boxing event in Russia. Got the call from PFL, so obviously he's coming this route, and this was going to be a real tough spot for him against Simeon Powell, in my opinion. Now I feel like the level of difficulty has drastically decreased in this fight for him.
Seriously.
He's a good wrestler. Wrestled in high school, wrestled with Cody Durden, who's obviously in the UFC now, and that's actually was the connect that got him in with American Top Team Atlanta. He is good grappling pressure. He's strong in the clinch, good takedowns from the body lock, tries to get them from trips as well. And yeah, the wrestling looks pretty good. Pretty much every fight that I've watched from him, he has been able to get some wrestling going. Looked pretty decent against Jason Butcher up until the tap, as short a period of time as that was. So I think I'm going to go with Carl Williams here. I've seen, I'm familiar with Amos. I haven't been super impressed. I feel like defensively, he's a little bit irresponsible at times on the feet. He is a decent wrestler, and, Williams is a good wrestler too. I just feel like Williams, with the training that he's been able to do coming into this, he's mentioned that he's been training with Douglas Lima, who also has a fight coming up. So he's been getting good rounds in. I feel like he's more prepared, and on such short notice. I mean, it's how many hours till the fight?
Yeah.
Not many, 2 days away.
Like 48.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to go with Carl Williams. I'll admit, I don't have a great read because this, got announced very shortly before we
had about 15 minutes notice for it. But we can roll with it.
I'm not saying I'm super confident, but I am going to go with Carl Williams to get the win against this guy on short notice here.
Yeah, I agree. Both guys 32 years old here, so definitely to be considered. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is. I am curious as to how many of these guys get to move on to the tournament, or if they become. Yeah, I'm curious to get some of that information as we go. But luckily, or unlucky in some ways, the first 2 fights are the ones with the short notice replacement. Next up is the second short notice replacement, Travis Bam Bam Davis, which if you're a Bellator fan, you should remember. Him taking on Johnny Eblin last year and just kind of getting beat up for 15 minutes, but was surviving. He's very tough. All the code words that mean that you're not that great at fighting. But, you need toughness. He's 34 years old. He was coming up from middleweight. Again, now fighting at light heavyweight. Taking on Bruce Soto, Soledado de Cristo. You can guess what that stands for in Portuguese. He's just a little tank, 5'10", 70.5-inch reach for a 205er. Weighed in for his last fight, a little under the weight limit, actually. So, not the biggest of guys here. And, that's kind of good for Travis, who's coming up from 185. So, but Bruce Soto is 14-3, 8 straight wins, fighting on Full House MMA. Last fought in April with LFA. Beating a guy who I really liked in Cristian Torres. Not the best record, not the best, most technical guy, but really a guy who's going to test your kind of overall toughness, your offense. If you're not getting it off, he'll get his offense off. I remember I actually picked Torres in that fight. He was a pretty large underdog, and I took a shot. I was wrong. It was not very close. Soto just kind of controlled the fight, honestly. He's fought over in jungle fights. You've seen fights. He's fought some good level of competition, guys like Wendell Aguero at 30-10. Definitely a good guy to kind of have experience with over in ACB when ACB was still a thing. 15-6 Williams Silly. Again, majority decision, goes through decision quite a bit. Has some good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. And I've not really heard of any of his losses. He has a loss to a 7-11 guy as well. And they're early on, though. Has not lost since 2015, but hasn't been the most active. I think that he should be able to, take care of Travis Davis. Travis Davis just doesn't show me a lot of threat on offense. Again, his main strengths seem to be he has pretty decent takedown defense. Evelyn was, working, but then kind of worked him down also. And, he's tough. Other than that, you don't see a lot of finishes. I believe he has a few with his grappling. I just don't see that coming into account here. I think that Soto probably takes it by decision just based on his previous kind of work and how his overall pace. But good for Travis for taking this fight on short notice. But, I think that, this is going to be a tough night for him.
Yeah, I agree. Coming into this fight, I was excited to see this matchup, Fagundes and Soto. Davis, obviously, the short notice replacement, a guy that both of us are familiar with. I think everyone who, watches Bellator is familiar with this guy. And he went the distance with Johnny Eblen, which a lot of people didn't think he would do. So you got to give him a couple points for that. I think it's going to be a bit of a tough matchup against Soto, who you mentioned hasn't lost since 2015. He's riding 8 straight wins and fought on some good shows, man. M1, ACB, LFA. He's fought the better competition outside of probably Johnny Eblen, which was Davis's last fight. Soto was the Jungle Fight 170-pound champ, and he returned to the cage 2 years later, up 2 weight classes at LFA 105 against Cristo Torres, like you mentioned. And he looked good at 205. He's listed at like 70 inches in reach on Tapology or something. That's not accurate. He actually has 74 inches, according to the LFA broadcast last time. And he got a good win, and, he's sticking with what worked at 205. He's got some hard leg kicks. He digs those in. Pretty decent hands, not crazy power. Only 3 knockouts in his 14 wins. He does go to decision a lot, but the power is, just enough to make people a little bit uncomfortable, make them second guess some movements. He comes forward, wants to back you up at the end of the punches, get you moving backwards, and he does like those takedowns. He was able to get a lot of back control in his last fight. He looked really good there, really slick transitions, and was just able to work the ground game really well. Good jiu-jitsu game, advances. He looks for the submissions, and he almost, he was threatening with that rear naked choke a lot of times in that last fight. Didn't end up getting it, but came close a couple times. Was able to get back control in all 3 rounds of that fight. And, he has good cardio too. He's been the distance a lot of times. That's, you like to see finishes, but at the same time, you like to know that these guys have a gas tank in their back pocket as well. And he's definitely shown that to us. Maybe, I don't know if we can really read too much into the size, considering that he came up because he looked so good at the weight last time, and he was big at 170. Davis is also pretty big too, but I think he's going to have less. I believe he has less reach. I think he's like 72.5 inches in reach, and he will have a little bit of height, but I don't think the size is going to be too big of an issue. Like you mentioned, he does have some finishes with his grappling, and he's had some success there. I don't see him having too much grappling success against Soto. I feel like he's pretty solid in that aspect of his game, and I feel like Soto is a little bit more polished here. I think he's fought the better competition. Obviously, he's been preparing more for this one, and he was preparing for a tough matchup against Fagundes, who is a really dangerous finisher from Brazil. And Soto has never been knocked out in 17 fights. I think that I'm going to go with Bruce Soto to get this one done, and I doubt that the number is going to be very good on this, to be honest.
No, it's probably going to be -4 or north, I bet. I think Travis Davis is going to have to surprise him with some power on the feet to.
Yep.
I think he'd have to rock him to sub him type of thing. So
yeah, and he has some boxing, so you never know. But
yeah, definitely. He's got some pro boxing experience. That's true.
Yep.
I agree. I like Soto here quite a bit. And Visceral, we'll find out on the broadcast. I think they're not going to take each one of these winners, though. I just can't imagine that they're that lacking on a season. To be honest, I think that it's going to be one of these. You got to do like the Dana White, like blow me away type of thing. And sometimes that works. MMA is way too kind of unpredictable to be like, oh, if we put like a carrot at the end of the string, then you'll fight better. Like it's just so like, PFL's tried to do that with the point system and it doesn't work. It really doesn't, and so with this, I think it's like if you're Carl Williams, you're going to have to really show me why you need to be in this. Otherwise, you can go take your Russian bare knuckle MMA fight after beating Black Santa. I think that's kind of how it is. They're fighting in Universal Studios, for God's sakes. Next fight is the first fight with an available line. So how about that? And both these guys have been on Dana White's Contender Series, right?
Yes, they both have.
I was going to say, this just feels like a Dana White Contender Series reject fight here. And Alexander Popek versus Taylor Johnson. Oh, man, the days of yours when Taylor Johnson was just this unstoppable prospect. Man. Remember those days?
Memory lane, real quick. Run me through the LFA resume real quick.
Yeah, so I will do that. He is now 7-3. A lot has changed. He now has a mustache, goatee thing. He's 7-3 now, so that lets you know a little bit about things. We go back to before his Contender Series fight, though, and his LFA run was that of legends. After knocking out Jamal Pogues, I never know how to say his name, but I know the guy. In his debut, he was off to the races. Knockout in 8 seconds in his LFA debut. Knockout in 36 seconds next. And then and all of these by ground and pound for the most part. And then knockout in 1:36. And then he went a whole 2 minutes and 43 seconds. So you're just like, let's go. He's facing a 17-4 Brazilian, but I don't know shit about this Brazilian. Give me Taylor Johnson -250 against Andre Muniz, and we were loving it. I remember I loved it at the time. I picked Taylor Johnson over Muniz. I said the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is not going to work against this power wrestler here. Little did we know that this is why I am scared of these sub-minute wins and everything over and over again. It didn't really matter in this fight. He got rear naked choked inside of 2 minutes. Then came back, got a heel hook of Ed Ruth on Bellator, and it was like, oh, are we back? Like, this is amazing. Here we go. Off to the races again. Here we go. Take on this Johnny Eplin guy. Show you're the better wrestling prospect. Show that, like, I remember I had said, I got Taylor Johnson here. He learned from the Andre Muniz fight.
I picked him in that one, too.
I was like, I got him over Evelyn. He's just a better version of Evelyn here. Sorry, more powerful. Evelyn just kind of handled him for that fight, really. I mean, just out-wrestled him. And then I was like, uh-oh. Then Lance Wright, not really, 5-1, but I wasn't super impressed by Lance Wright. Came in, subbed him inside of 3 minutes. We're all good. Then the Fabio Aguero fight happens. And again, I'm like, Taylor Johnson. I've picked against Taylor Johnson, I think, one time in his career, to be honest with you. I think the rest of the time I picked him. I had Taylor Johnson in this fight against Aguero. I was like, Fabio looked okay, but I just think Taylor puts it on him. And it was a split decision that Taylor should have taken, but gas tank issues, has issues mixing up the stand-up with the wrestling for sure. If the wrestling doesn't get going, he has a lot of trouble here, and he's facing a really, really big guy in Popek, who is a very good striker. This is the good old striker versus the grappler here. It really is kind of classic. You look at Popek, you can see he's enormous. Definitely cuts down to 205 for the German, still only 29 years old. 3 straight wins for him as well since losing to Jamal Hill on the Contender Series. In the second round, his other losses coming to Dusko Todorovic and Rob Wilkinson. I get Rob Wilkinson didn't have a good career, but off in the regional scene, he was really legit. He was 10-0 at the time that he faced Popek. So very good high level of competition. It is a little bit of a concern that all 3 of Popek's losses have come on the ground in some form or another, because that is Taylor Johnson's bread and butter. And you think I'm picking against Taylor Johnson here? You're crazy. I'm picking Taylor Johnson. The wrestling gets going, and I think he submits him in the first round, and we don't get to learn if Taylor has shored up the game or if Taylor can ever win a decision, because we might never know that. It might be get past the 3-minute mark with Taylor and you win.
Yeah, Popek versus Johnson, man. This is one that
Great
I'm looking
fight.
forward to. Yeah, 2 guys that we saw in Contender Series both came up short there, and now they're in basically the same scenario, just with a different promotion.
Contender Series at home, also known as PFL Challenger Series.
Popek, man, 12-3 striker out of Germany on 3 straight wins. He was finished by Jamal Hill in Contender Series in 2019. I think he'll probably knock out Taylor Johnson too. So I'm not really too concerned about that loss. The way that he did it, I mean, Mount, I don't think would maybe get Mount on Taylor Johnson. I feel like he'd just tune him up on the feet. But yeah, Popek also lost to Todorovic and Wilkinson, aka the guy that Israel Adesanya debuted against, to any of the historians out there. And, Wilkinson was cut from the UFC, but he's still continuing to do well outside of it. He's 13-2 now still. Only 2 losses came in the UFC. Popek, 7 knockouts, not really much of a grappler. You mentioned when he does get into trouble, that's normally where it is. He lost via rear naked choke to both Dushko, Todorovic, and Wilkinson. And like we mentioned, he was mounted by Jamal Hill and finished with elbows there. But he's a good striker, good Muay Thai, going to have a slight reach advantage here. Goes to the low kick pretty often in the pocket, get a decent right cross. I feel like he doesn't set the stuff up super well all the time. Sometimes he's a little bit vulnerable, kind of lunging forward with the right hand, in my opinion. Was pretty open for the counters against Jamal Hill, but guys who have that good boxing, like a guy that has, like a guy like Jamal Hill, are going to give him a little bit of trouble. I don't really think Taylor Johnson is going to challenge him too much in that same aspect, but definitely needs to make sure he isn't overextending and allowing Johnson to get in on a deep shot, because if that happens, it's going to be trouble, in my opinion. The biggest concern is going to be Johnson catching him with his legs together or getting in on a deep shot, getting his hands locked, something like that. I don't know how much resistance he's going to be able to offer if he gets taken down early in a round, but he's shown some pretty good takedown defense on tape. Tries to dig the underhook, push the head down, does the right things. And I think a guy that has the wrestling of Taylor Johnson is going to be tough, though. Popek will have the size advantage, being 4 inches taller, and the natural 205-pounder will be the bigger guy. Taylor Johnson's been at 185. But yeah, Johnson, a really familiar face. We talked about the LFA run. We've talked about the Bellator run. I don't think we need to talk too much about that. I believe he's down at Sanford MMA now. Still says American Top Team Portland on Tapology. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he was training at Sanford, at least leading up until the Fabio Aguiar fight. Not the best striker. He's not going to win a stand-up fight here, but it's not like he doesn't know that. It's not like Popek doesn't know that either. He tries to enter with the double jab, throws the high kick every now and again, can be a little bit loose defensively at times. You mentioned, he doesn't really mix it in that well with the grappling all that much, but obviously very good wrestler. Going to look to wrestler here. Very physically strong, but been known to gas a little bit. I picked against him last time against Fabio Aguiar just because I was like, I don't know if this gets hairy down the line. I don't know.
You were right.
I didn't bet it, so I wasn't that confident. I'm not bragging that much, but I was a little bit scared about that. And this is a tricky one to predict, in my opinion. Obviously, at surface level, it's striker versus grappler, and normally, you want to favor the grappler here. Factoring in kind of the size advantage that I think Popek is going to have and the gas tank concerns, I can't feel confident on Johnson at like around minus 200. I feel like he's definitely going to have some early success. I just don't know if I can trust him with the chalk there. I'm not lining up to bet Popek either. It's not like I think this guy is like, wow, what an underdog. Like, can't believe he's the dog. I definitely understand why. If the gas tank holds up and he really gets the wrestling going, it's definitely going to be a close fight. I'm probably going to pass here, but I'm just going to lean to the dog slightly in a close fight.
Nice. Yeah, it's approaching the minus 200 now. Just Taylor Johnson cannot shake the bettors. They still believe in him. I still believe in him. Like, again, I'd pick in every fight I could pick probably 6 Taylor Johnson fights. I picked him 6 times. So I'll mention that right off the bat. But yeah, minus 190, pretty steep, plus 160 on Popek. Still not quite enough to bet him. It's kind of a tough line to do much with there, in my opinion. And we'll see how the extra 20 pounds work for him. I think that should really, Taylor Johnson with gas becomes a very, very exciting prospect. I'll just say that.
If I knew the gas tank was going to hold up, this is Taylor Johnson all day long. That's really the only reservation I have. Yeah, no,
and if he is still at Sanford, I can't think of a better gym for Taylor Johnson to be at.
Absolutely.
Sanford. So, I think that I'm still believing in you, Taylor. At least this might be the one that breaks me, though. If he loses to Popek here, I think I'm done. Just like I think everybody will be done after that. I think the next. So, I'm not really being revolutionary there. We are to the main event now. It is again at 205, of course. Josh de Salvaria, who I just always struggled to say his name for whatever reason, but huge fan of him. Taking on Mohamed Juma. This is if there's one guy on the Challenger Series they're hoping makes the season, it's Josh Silveria. Very obvious. If you watch his fights, he's very, very complete. Comes from a really good pedigree. Also, obviously at ATT now, former Arizona State wrestler, 29 years old. Has fought at 185 for a lot of his career. Has done some catchweight fights. Has kind of been like, am I a 205er? Am I a 185er? I personally think that's the reason why he's in PFL and not signed with the UFC right now. I think he's still trying to figure that out, honestly, because I think at 205, he is a little bit undersized, although he's very, very good. So it makes up for a lot of those differences. Not to mention 205 is maybe the worst division in the sport right now, like overall top to bottom, pretty close. I don't know. But either way, like it's a rough division. It's one that, you can definitely make a run in quicker than maybe 185 at this point. And, again, Taylor, Johnson kind of showed how much that drains him. So very similar type of thing. But I'll break down the Sudanese fighter, Mohammed King John Juma first. He's 5'11", weighed in at 218 for his last fight, 26 years old, fighting on Cairo. I didn't know anything about this guy. He's on a Black Bulls team. He's 8-2, which is a decent record coming off of a fish hook loss. He lost for fish hooking in UAE, and PFL is like, yep, we want that. Give me it. He fish hooked the 6-4 opponent. Before that, a lot of knockouts. Kind of what you'd expect out of a fighter from this region. Often they seem to have the power in the hands, and he's no exception to that. A lot of first-round knockouts, caught a second-round knockout as well. He won a fight by forfeit, but I've never heard of a soul he's fought. He's fought an 0-5 guy, an 0-1 guy, an 0-2-1 guy. Got rear naked choked in his debut. Fish hooked a 6-4 guy. I mean, this is clearly Josh Silveria all day long. I mean, they gave him the easiest opponent they could find, I feel, while still being able to sell it because he has an 8-2 record. He's probably going to be physically imposing. And, I mean, that is like the only question is if he's just so much bigger than Silveria and he can't deal with that. But I think that Silveria is going to have such a gas tank, such a speed advantage, and just, I think be able to just kind of outwork him and, eventually submit him.
Yeah, Josh Sovier is a guy that I really like. 7-0 LFA double champ, middleweight and light heavyweight. In my opinion, LFA fighter of the year last year. I feel like that's pretty clear. I feel like a lot of people would agree with me there. And this is, I've talked about this guy a whole lot of times, talking about LFA as much as we do.
Right.
We talk about Josh Sovier a lot. He's been featured in many, many of yours and my videos. And I've picked him every single time.
It's working out. Much better than Taylor Johnson so far.
Yes, so far. He's got an 86% finish rate, and he showed us he can go 5 rounds in his last fight against a tough veteran in Jared Ravel to win the middleweight belt and become the double champ in LFA. And, his strengths are more in the grappling, but he is solid on the feet as well. He's a measured striker, good kicks. He had that nasty head kick KO to win the light heavyweight belt in LFA over T. Cummins. Excellent wrestler. Wrestled at ASU, good jiu-jitsu game too, son of the American Top Team head coach, good takedowns. He's got good transitions, good at getting to the back. He loves that rear naked choke. He's had a lot of success with that on the regional circuit. And in his last fight against a really solid guy in Jared Ravel, who is a jiu-jitsu black belt and a guy that competes, in jiu-jitsu outside of MMA. And he had a lot of success in the grappling and wrestling there. That was an impressive performance. And the cardio, it never was really a concern, but it was always kind of a question mark. We just didn't really know because he finished his fight so early, but he got that 5-round experience under his belt last fight. So now we know he can go. Juma, on the other hand, is a guy I didn't know a ton about, had to run the tape a lot on this guy. 8-2 prospect from Sudan. Last 2 fights have come on UAE Warriors. You mentioned the fish hooking disqualification. This other one was a first-round finish. Got 100% finish rate, 8 KOs.
Right.
And, this is definitely going to be the toughest matchup that Juma has had. And, he was the ref in the fight before the DQ. He had a point deducted there. The ref was Frank Trigg, kind of an interesting fact there. But he's a guy that kind of can play a little dirty at times. Was disqualified in his last fight, had a point deducted in the fight before that, and that was a fight that ended in the first round. So
he won a fight by disqualification early in his career.
He has a DQ win, too.
just a lot of controversy surrounding around Juma. And one more thing, the T. Cummins fight, I think, is a huge key. He did show he has the power to knock out a heavyweight in T. Cummins in that fight as well. And that was a fight where I was a little nervous actually coming into it for Silveria because I thought the size was going to be an issue. Not at all. So
I was actually on plus 475, Sovier knockout in that one. So
that's a good hit
I was
right there.
Very happy to see that head kick knockout. It was a beauty.
Yeah.
And the thing you mentioned, the size, right? So Juma has fought at heavyweight in the past, and he's going to have about 7 inches in reach here.
Yep.
We mentioned Sovier is kind of a tweener. He's a little bit in between 185 and 205 at this point. But he fought at a very similar reach disadvantage in his last fight against Jared Ravel, and it didn't really seem to have too much of an impact. So I don't think it's not really something I'm concerned about. Juma seems really strong. We have seen him work the wrestling before, really heavy on top, and the ground and pound also very heavy. I just don't think, technically speaking, he's on the same level as Josh in this department. I mean, physicality maybe could be potentially an equalizer, but I'm not going to bank on that. I think Sovier is a lot more technical. I think he's going to want to either be all the way in or all the way out here. I don't think you want to be getting into a firefight, mixing it up with Juma. But yeah, I think Josh has all the technical skills to win. But I'm not too enthused about the price, minus 550, minus 600. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit surprised to see it this wide. I mean, I was expecting minus 300, minus 400. Seemed a little bit wide, at the open. But Silvera is a prospect I'm really excited about. Fully expect him to win here. I'm probably not going to play this one at minus 550, but I do like Josh Silvera to win, and I'm really excited to finally see him take that next step to a level above the regional scene here. So this should be really exciting.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I get this is a betting show, but unfortunately, I think on the first week, I'm going to have to be pretty selective on the bets I'm making on the Challenger Series. I'm not betting a minus 600 Josh Silveria here. I mean, and it's just, I wish that I could have gotten Taylor Johnson at dog money. I was hoping that might have happened, but that appears to be shipping towards a minus 200, minus 300 range, which I'm not crazy about. Bruce Soto is going to be in the minus 4 range. I mean, it's one of these I think we're going to have to just kind of watch and maybe try to pick up some props, maybe do a full card parlay because I'm a degen. But either way, I'm excited to check out what their plan is with this. I'm sure they're going to have more explanation and visceral. I'm getting started on the Eagle FC review right now. I'm going to try to get it done maybe tomorrow morning. I'll see. I'm pretty booked the rest of the day today, though. But I would like to start getting the Eagle FCs started. But those sometimes get pretty research demanding with some of these the Russian fighters and watching tape in Chechenian and stuff like that. It's a lot sometimes, and sometimes the fighters all like when it's like a Gasarov and a Gazamarov, and like it's a lot. No, it's all good. I'm more talking to myself. I'm trying to talk myself into doing it. But anyways, we'll wrap up the show for today. This is the first of, I believe, 6 weeks of the PFL Challenger Series. So Lucky Locks will be with me for all of those, as well as the LFAs and other, regional scenes that no one else I'd rather cover it with. So Lucky, are you doing a video for the Challenger Series as well on your channel?
I did do a video, but 2 of the fights are different now.
Yeah. You were too quick.
To get the full scoop, I guess people can just come here.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, and it's we waited just enough time. If we would have went 15 seconds earlier or 15 minutes earlier, we would have been talking about 2 fights that didn't happen. So it's always check your Tapology, people, or whatever your site is. But should be fun. It's a great weekend of MMA, PFL Challengers, Eagle FC Friday, Bellator, UFC. And a BKFC Knucklemania 2 on Saturday. And go ahead and give Lucky Locks a follow if you're not already over on his channel. He's always doing great stuff. Sometimes he's just a little too quick with the releases there. But until next week, we are out. Aaron the Dog and Lucky Locks. Take care, everybody. Peace.